crappy isolation, and just like everybody else, every other fisherman in isolation, I'm trying to come up with ways of increasing my tackle supply so that when we finally get the all clear, we're all ready to go. So today I'm going to be making some fishing weights. Now I was described as an old school fisherman today, and as an old school fisherman I've probably had a lot of the things that can go wrong with you, for you. So melting leads, I've been doing that for 40 years and I've had some near misses doing it. So I would urge that if you're going to be making your own leads, that you're wearing the right personal protective equipment. So I've got eye protection on, I'm wearing long trousers, I've got boots, it's my trousers which are tucked into my boots, which if I splash molten lead on them, they're not going to burn through. I've got long sleeves, and the thing that I don't see people using very often, but I think it's a must, is some means of protecting your lungs. Lead, when it's molten, it's very hot. It can be explosive if you introduce a little bit of water into it by mistake, which has happened to me once, and I end up splashing up the wall. Luckily, it missed me, but it hit the wall. And the other thing about it is very toxic, and you can get it into your body, obviously through your skin, you can get it through eating it, and you can get it through breathing the fumes in. And once it's in your body, apparently it goes to the core of your bones and it stays there for a very long time. So it's something you don't want there, which means if you're doing a lot of melting lead, it accumulates in your body. Yeah, and it's not good. Of course, you have bad headaches, it affects your nervous system and various other things. Not good. So when I start doing this, I'm going to be wearing face mask. System I've got set up here is I'm burning calorie gas from a propane gas cylinder. I've got a hand burner which I've got rigged up so it's pointing up towards the base of my smelting pot. My smelting pot is a cast iron saucepan, so it's good and solid. It holds the heat so it doesn't cool down instantly, so it gradually accumulates the heat so you get a good melt. And I've got some ladles, and I've got all my moulds set up here. So let's more do, we'll have a little stir around and I'll show you how we're going to make these weights. So we're going to be making a proprietary lead system, which you can buy from tackle shops, made by a company called Gemini. Obviously there are other manufacturers on the scene, but I quite like the Gemini weights. They come with everything you need, so all the makings here, and the mould. And the mould has a device which you can mount in it, so you can adjust the weight of your lead. And I'm going to go for some fairly light leads. I've got some heavy ones already made up, but one of the things I was noting recently is that I've run out of the light ones, so I'm going to make some light ones up. Okay, so basically you have this little block that hits in there, you get your boom that fits into there like that and sits in here. This got a little recess for it, but it's probably better to do it the other way around, if the truth be known. Let's try it the other way around. So we're going to make it a nice light lead. The boom sits in there, sits on that little notch, and then the mould sits together. You have to get it straight. It's sitting in the notch at the moment. That's it. And so there it is, made up. You need to make sure that that is sitting down there in place, so that it's not forcing the sides of the mould apart, which means that we're getting leak. And then what we do is we're going to clamp that together. And what I found are quite good for clamping these moulds together are these sprung clips. So they fit across there like that, holds it together very nicely. And then what we need to do is we need to heat this mould up, because if it's not hot enough, as you pour the lead in, it'll just solidify and bung the hole up and you won't fill it. So we're going to put that so that it's sitting on the edge of our smelting pot for the time being. Okay, so it's getting a bit of heat. Going to get our ladle, which hasn't been used in a while. We'll sit that in the lead as well, so that gets nice and hot, so that's not cooling down. Okay, and we'll leave that. You see I've got some pipe in there which is melting down, so I'm just increasing the amount of lead I've got. Now with regard to pipe can be very dangerous when you're putting it into molten lead, so you've got to insert it into the molten lead very gradually and very carefully, and make sure that the end of the pipe, that the end that's out of the lead, is pointing away from you, because if there's a tiniest little bit of water inside that pipe, it will explode, and if there's molten lead above it, it will explode and it will fire that molten lead out of the pipe like a molten lead bullet, and you really don't want that in your face. And as I said, I have learnt that from the hard way. So you can use pipe. I've heard some people don't use pipe, but you just have to be very careful how you go about it. Okay, well we'll let that bubble away for a while, and then we'll see how we get on. Right, this is quite a clever mould. I bought these in the States, or bought them from the States, mail order. And basically, it takes away the need for any messing around with bits of wire or anything like that. The whole thing is moulded from lead. It's in a hinged container like that. So lead pours into there, and out of it comes a 6 ounce or 8 ounce lead. I wouldn't mind getting some smaller ones of those actually. I've got some for making lead head jigs, but it would be nice if they have a 4 and a 5 ounce or 4 and a 3 ounce as well. But yeah, very clever idea. A wooden handle, so it protects yourself, you're not touching red hot metal, or you've got to be careful you don't put it around and touch the metal at the back here, which can be a bit hot. Yeah, good bit of kit. So we're going to be making some of those up as well, at the same time as making the Geminis up, just because it saves a bit of time if you're doing 2 or 3 leads at the same time. Right, carry on. Need to get this lead nice and hot. If it's only just melted, the chances are it will go solid before you actually fill the lead and block the hole up. Okay, well here we've been joined by Billy Bob the vlog dog. He really doesn't need to be here when I'm smelting lead, so we need to get him away. Come on, wait, away, come on, away, away. Right, so we poured the first couple, and the proof of the pudding. Obviously you have to leave them a little while to the lead set, otherwise you take them out and they'll just collapse on you. The first of our Gemini leads, and it's a nice small one. There's the thread there that the actual breakaway clips are on. We'll trim that bit off and that'll go back into the lead pot in a minute, and then the splashdown clip attaches onto there. So look at these American ones. This one poured okay, that one didn't, so that can go back in the melt. This one needs to go back in. That can go back and be melted down again. Oh, and that one hasn't gone either. Yeah, so that needs to go back in again. So we had success with the Gemini, but we didn't have success with the rest. It's probably because the moulds weren't hot enough. So we'll just keep on. And of course all the time the lead is getting hotter. And the more heat that it holds, the better the pour. here we are in the tackle shed, and we're going to do the last part of this task, and that's rigging up these leads that we just made. So we're going to have a look at the Gemini leads, and we're also going to have a look at these American leads, because there's a little bit of rigging that needs to be done with them as well. But first of all, let's look at the Gemini lead. Now, a while since the last time I rigged up one of these leads, so it's going to be a little bit of a journey of adventure, a voyage of discovery again, just reminding myself how to do it. Just as an aid memoir, I've got one here that I prepared earlier, just to remind myself how it works. And basically, you've got the plastic sleeve there, very important. It's got a little tiny notch in it, which has to tie up with that little tiny dint in the actual boom. Okay, and that then is fixed in place. And then you have a sliding bait releaser, which is attached to this splashdown. So essentially what happens is you lock the hook into that little space there, so it's locked into that little space there. Okay, and then when it hits the water pressure flips this up, which actually pushes the hook out and releases it. That's the idea, and as I say, that's the idea. They work very well. They have modified these slightly, and I think they've made it a slightly wider gate on here and a smaller disc. But as I say, these work perfectly well, and this is what I've got, so this is what I've got to work with. The other thing we've got to look at is how we mount the actual breakaway wires onto the nose of the lead. But we'll look at that next. Now, I like things that have multiple uses and multiple way of amending things around. So you could, in theory, unscrew this end and just put a plain end on the end of it. Now, they come color coded as well. If you're really organised, and I'm not, you can colour code your leads for the different weights, so at a glance you can see what weight lead you're putting on. But essentially there you've got just a normal lead that's going to roll around on the bottom and be dragged without hooking in, or you could, if you're going to do some uptide fishing, perhaps you want to put a longer reach for the wires, you can put one of these in, or a really long one like that. Now, my only comment on these is when I'm uptiding, I don't want to break out, so I don't want this to be coming unattached, all right? Because if it moves down tide a bit and then it hooks back in again, that's good, all right? So what I would probably do, or what I do is I put a bit of electrical masking tape around there just to hold these in place to stop them coming undone. So there you go. So there we have it. Yesterday we used this this mould to mould the leads, using a boom which come already made. It's ready shaped with the little tiny nose wire screw already in place, and the stop that goes inside here, so you can adjust the size of your leads. And yesterday we were going for the smallest size of lead, which is about 4 ounces. Because for the type of fishing I want to be doing, that's about all I want to be casting really. I've got some heavy leads for heavy seas, but being a bit of a fair weather angler, I tend to go out when it's not too rough. And as we saw yesterday, we put this into this slot on this side, so it's seated down, pushed this through, so it's sitting there and it's sitting against that little notch. Okay, and then we put the mould together, clamped it together with one of these big spring clamps, and then poured lead into there. Now obviously there's a little bit more to it than that. This has to be hot. The lead has to be particularly hot as well, because otherwise it would just bung, and as we saw on the first couple of attempts, it didn't actually fill. And then we break it apart, and Bob's your mother's brother, out comes a made lead. Had to cut a bit of sprue off there, might have tied it up a little bit more actually. Because it's soft and it's lead, we can actually just bash that down, and that will just smooth that out. So that smooths it out, so it's something that's not going to catch on the line. And so we're now going to take it to the next stage, so we can put this all out of the way, and we can think about what we're going to do here. Now, looking at the ready-made one, where have I put the ready-made one? Yeah, here's the ready-made one. Okay, or the one that I made earlier. Essentially we have this in place, this in place, sliding on there. Now my recollection is that we have to assemble these two parts first, so we have to get this bit and this bit, and they kind of have to be assembled in conjunction with this. So this is a little bit fiddly. If it comes out that easy, it means it must go in that easy. So that hooks underneath there like that, okay, and then this pushes on so that that little hole is locked in place on that notch. I say it's fiddly, but once it's on, it's on. It stays on. It's really good. It's really well thought and well engineered. And that locks down into that little, that sits in there, and there we have it. So you imagine your hook sitting in there like that. It's locked in place. The lead hits the water, the splashdown operates, and it pushes that off, and your hook's free. Okay, so there we have it. I'll do one more of those now. I've got the swing of it. See if we can do one a little bit more smoothly than that. So that's one done. Let's have a look at putting on the wires. I'm going to go for quite short wires. You've got a selection of wires in here, but I think for what I'm trying to do and the type of fishing that I want to do, I want fairly short wires, because I don't want it to lock in so hard that I can't get it out. And also the tides that we're going to be fishing and the seas that we're going to be fishing aren't going to be that rough, so we don't need to have big wires. Now these are going to have to end up so they're like that. Either side of that locked in place. It's got to go through from this side. Yeah, so it comes in, feeds around, comes all the way around to that flat point, and there we have it, first wire on. So now we've done one, we know which way to go, don't we? So there's one in place. So the next one here, in, we want it to end up like that. So it goes in here, this side, feeds in, bends around, and snaps into place. Two. Round. Snaps down. Snaps into place. And there we have one. Now you can put a bit of plastic on here just to give them a little bit more bling, if you like. Gives them a little bit more breadth, so they're not cutting through the sand. So we've gone with the blue, so let's stick with the blue. So we want to cut this so it's that length. So we'll cut 4 lengths of that, and again we just feed that onto the wire. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I have experienced these do come off, and you probably see on this lead here it's lost its little leg. That was probably because I went past the bend. If you go past the bend, there's nothing to stop it feeding off. At least if there's a bend below it, it's going to stop against that bend. And then of course this screws on the end of there. I think with these, that should be right. And there we have, nice little Gemini lead. Great piece of kit. Use those to great effect as a great way of locking yourself into the seabed. The beauty of these over some different brands is each one of these is independent, so if it's lying onto that one spike, it's that one spike that's going to break out. Or if something pulls against it in the tide and one breaks out, you've still got others that are hooking in. Yeah, so great piece of kit. As I said, if I was going to uptide or set this weight up for uptiding, then I would put this on an extended like that. And what we want is it to sit into the sand slightly. Let's put one of these together and see how it goes. We'll put some longer wires in this, I think. Now, see how this is lying on the bottom. So as you pull into it, it's hooking in. This is lying the opposite way round. So already it's digging in. So even the lightest pressure is starting to dig in, even before you start to lift that lead up and pull away. So it's much harder into the bottom. But with uptiding, obviously there's a lot of pressure. There's a big bow on the line, a lot of water pressure on the line. It is possible sometimes they'll move. All right, and so what you don't want is this to break out and then it will just drag away. So you want this to stay wired. And as I've said, the way that I get around that is I get some electrical insulating tape and wrap it around there so they won't actually come out. Breakaway do a setup where you can actually put nose wires into something. I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. So there's a nose wire one. So they come with the nose wires. So that was the Gemini tackle system, system 100. You can get this system box, which has the moulds and all the fittings, or as you buy or need, you can order more, and you can get them in your tackle shops. Certainly Angler's Den do them, and as you know, we're trying to encourage you to buy from your tackle shops. So that was the Gemini. Let's have a look at this American system then. Now I started buying these because I wanting to make jig heads. So I got a mould here which has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jig heads, from very tiny right up to quite large ones. Okay, and it's the same sort of idea. You have to have special hooks for this. You have to have a hook with the right angled bend in the arm of the hook, and the eye of the hook sits in there. Okay, so that once it's rigged, the line will come off the off the eye there, and the jig sits at the right way up, and then you fit whatever sort of rubber tail or what have you onto the jig. And it's the same idea as what you saw me using when we were making the bigger leads, and the pour holes here. Beauty of this is there's no need for clamps. It's got wooden handles, so you're not going to burn your hands, although I found out the hard way, if you reach your fingers around and touch that metal, it will burn you. So you've got to be a little bit disciplined in how you're using it. So we've got jig heads. We've got a different type of jig head here. It's got a little claw on it, so attached to your jelly worm or whatever you're fitting on there. But it's essentially the same idea. And then I've got one here for making little bombs. So all the way from 2 ounce all the way up to little micro things. I mean, I'd use split shot rather than mess around with that personally. But these are really good. When I've been bass fishing from the kayak, I use these or these just to put a little bit of weight on the end of the line and then suspend a prawn on an arm above that. And we'll perhaps look at that a bit later in the year when we get a chance to do some of that. And then finally, the thing I was using yesterday, which I've got an 8 and a 6 ounce mould. Now this, again, they're great because messing around, you're not putting any nose wires in them or anything like that, because it's all part of the mould. The downside of that is that is quite thick. That is thicker than any sort of clip that you're ever going to find for clipping that onto the bottom of your line. So what I've come up with to get around that is I use a little bit of garden wire. Now we just thread that through, twist it into place, trim off any ends because you don't want anything that's going to catch line. Okay, and then whatever you're using, a boom or a swivel, you just do the same thing on the other side, twist it into place. Now the additional beauty of that, well, there's two beauties. One, means you can suspend it quite long if you need to, And two, if you're fishing over a rough bottom and you're a bit worried about losing gear, you can just twist this on a couple of times. So maybe just put 2 twists on it. Okay, so it's linked in there. That's good enough. That's going to withstand the sort of rigours of going up and down. But if this gets hooked in, that will just unpull, and you'll just leave the lead behind. Now, obviously, if you've got fish on, that's happy days. You've lost your lead, but you've got your fish. All right, so that's just something that I use. Always try and trim off these little bits of sprue if you can, because that's just something you can catch line on. So let's see if we can bang that off. We trimmed it off as much as we can with a pair of pliers, but you get left with a bit. But as I say, because it's lead, it will knock down. Okay, happy days. Right, I think where we're going to go next, obviously we can't go fishing. So let's talk about some lure fishing. So that will be my next video, as we'll go in and we'll start talking about lure fishing. Now, I've been lure fishing for quite a few years. I even have a starring role in John Darling's book about bass fishing. There's a couple of pictures of me in there, and a picture of all my lures actually at the time. So we'll talk about that, but we'll do that next video. Right, thanks very much everyone. If you've enjoyed what we're doing here, we're trying to keep ourselves amused during this horrible coronavirus lockdown period. Please click on the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Click on the like, and leave me some comments. I got a comment the other day, my videos were too long, so okay, I don't know if that's the case. I will try and keep this one fairly short and see how it goes. But I'd say tight lines, dreaming about tight lines. Let's get fishing soon.